What's something you always assumed was mandatory in life until you met someone who just didn't do it? Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to the Vancher channel. Also, please share your thoughts on this video in the comments. Let's get started. Story 1. Probably already mentioned, but not having to give an explanation about anything, really. I used to give my bosses full reasons about why I was requesting PTO or calling in sick. Or if I didn't want to attend an event, I felt like I needed to have an excuse why I didn't or couldn't go. Then I met a coworker who just didn't do that. She would call out sick with the reason I won't be in today, and that's it. She declined coming to a dinner I was hosting by just saying I won't make the event, which is 1,000 fine by me. It just blew my mind, and I love it. Answer: I remember an internship I had in college with a huge company and needing to call off. I don't remember why, but I know I wasn't sick. Anyway, I had a whole speech planned about needing the day off, and they were like, okay, marked you absent for the day. Bye. I was like, huh? But you didn't even hear my great excuse that took me all night to prepare. LOL edit. A spelling. Story 2. Hearing me out without getting defensive. I had a million comebacks ready, and my college roommate said, I'm sorry, thank you for talking to me about this. I'll do better. Floored. Answer: this reminds me of my first boyfriend and I. I had grown up in a really passive-aggressive family. You don't say anything until you're super pissed off, and then you explode, and then the person you're attacking explodes back at you, and you have a huge fight and get everything off your chest, and then you move on with no resolution. I got all worked up and snapped at him rather rudely, expected him to snap back at me and have our first fight. Instead, he just stopped, looked at me, tilted his head, and said, okay, let's talk about that. I was flabbergasted. He taught me then and there how to properly communicate and work through your feelings with a partner. It's been 11 years, 2 degrees, a cross-country move, a pandemic lockdown, a wedding, and a toddler later, and we've still yet to have a single fight. We just talk. It's wild. Story 3. A man helped me with my car and didn't get frustrated and swear. I was so shocked, and then I was shocked that I was shocked because it made me realize every other time I've needed help with my car, my dad or mom made me feel like an extreme burden. Also why I'd rather pay someone to help me than rely on anyone. Answer: this is it for me. My partner has been doing more to help round the house, e.g. making dinner sometimes, sorting our toddler out for bedtime, or carrying heavy things up and down the stairs for me, as I'm very heavily pregnant, but he swears and grumbles so much while doing it, it honestly makes me just want to do it myself. And then everyone wonders why I never ask for help, and I'm so tired and burn out all the time. Story 4. Quitting an event that sucks rather than sticking it out because you've already paid for it is maximum freedom. Answer: I once signed up my 6th grade daughter for a week-long summer volleyball camp because she loved playing volleyball in gym class. At the end of day 1, I peeked in and saw her dragging herself across the court while all these blonde ponytailed volleyball princesses were running around as if the day had just started. I realized this was a serious athletic camp and was no place for hobbyists like my daughter. On our way home, I asked her if she wanted to come back tomorrow or stay home. She said she has to come back because we paid a lot of money for it. I told her the money is gone either way, so that's not a factor in the decision anymore. Now the question is, would she be happier staying home or coming back? When we got home, I called the camp and told them not to wait up for her. We were out $250 for that volleyball camp, but I think the lesson she learned was worth more than that. Story 5. Deal with failure without emotional fallout. I once failed in something majorly in a pretty significant life milestone. I felt horrible, embarrassed, lost. The person who helped me immediately went into pragmatic mode. All right, that's tough. We're going to pivot. Here are the other options available. Here are the resources for them, and let's talk about what direction you want to go next. I was expecting to get yelled at, chastised, to have to roil in the shame and disappointment, but there was no pragmatic basis for that, and instead we just moved on. That experience shifted my entire approach to emotional fallout during tough times on a very deep level, and it really changed me for the better. Answer: I've been using Dungeons & Dragons to explore failure. I struggle with being easily overwhelmed in real life, but in D&D, I can put real care and effort into it. And when something goes wrong, it's a story pivot and something to build off. I actually think doing it when I was unemployed helped me deal with struggle in my next job and realize there are so many things I don't need to stress about that I did in with past jobs. Story 6. Pay attention to facts and reality. There are people who will literally tell you they don't care what the truth is because they believe something else. And no, it's true. Honestly, growing up, I thought we all had to have reasons for our beliefs and behaviors. But no, some people just do shoot and believe shoot with no reason at all. Edit: wow, this blew up while I was at work. Thanks, everyone. Except that guy who doesn't know what a fact is, go read a dictionary. Answer: totally this. One thing I've noticed getting older is that it's a huge flaw so many people have. Doesn't matter how intelligent people are. Their views and the way they see things are very biased on their preconceived ideas, or they see the way that benefits themselves. Self-awareness, knowing why you see things a certain way are very good things to have. Some people can't grasp the concept. Story 7. Having a house or apartment that you return to in the same place every day. I have some friends who are essentially nomadic. They travel all over the country working events and have no house aside from the camper they live in. I think I never really pictured this as a possible lifestyle before this. I just assumed that people would leave their real house for a few months at a time and then come back. But nope. Their camper is their full-time house and they just move it every 2 months or so. Blew my mind a bit. Answer: this is how I live. I work abroad for NGOs, so I'm always in work accommodations or hotels or compounds. Then between contracts, I live out of hostels and go backpacking as it's cheaper than getting an apartment for 3-4 months. It's exhausting never having a home, but also I can't imagine being stuck in one place all the time. But it's weirdly liberating yet sad being in your 30s and having everything you own fit in 2 suitcases. I have a few trinkets and photos and a thin tapestry that I hang up everywhere to make them feel like home. The real challenge is that you leave little pieces of your heart everywhere you go, and you can never have all the pieces, friends, family, favorite restaurants, bars, colleagues, in the same place, so you are always yearning for where you aren't. Story 8. Living with your spouse until I met my uncle. His children were old enough to have left his house. He remarried, but they didn't live together. He has his house and she have her apartment. They just see each other when they want to. Answer: my mom lives in the woods with her wolf dogs, and my stepdad lives an hour away in town. He visits on the weekends. That will be changing soon with him finally retiring and selling his house to move in with my mom, but they've been doing this for the past decade. Before that, she was living even deeper in the woods. He would bring her supplies when he visited and help her pump water. Story 9. I always assumed people needed coffee every morning until I met someone who never drank it and seemed perfectly fine. Story 10. Seeking approval. And my little brother never did. He is a jerk in many things, but he really is inspiring. Answer: this is my little brother too. We're about 5 years apart in age, and when he was 17 or 18, I asked him about it. He said, I saw how hard you tried and you were still always in trouble. You were a good kid, but mom never treated you like one. So I decided to do whatever I want if I'm going to be in trouble either way. And that really clicked for me. I couldn't even resent him anymore. I'm sure you'll be shocked to hear that he was rarely in trouble with my mom. Either her standards were vastly different with him, or she found him easier to deal with despite his disrespect and disregard. Story 11. Dysfunctional household. My parents were very passive-aggressive and sensitive to criticism. We kids were always wrong, very few apologies or admissions of fault. Fast forward to my second relationship. My boyfriend and I were having dinner with his parents. His dad did something that upset him, and he told him as much. I expected his dad to snap defensively because that's what my parents always did. Nope. His dad just listened to him and apologized, and the evening went on as normal with no lingering anger. I was flabbergasted. I got a little glimpse at what having a well-adjusted, communicative family is like, and 5 years later, I still think about it often. Story 12. Working full-time. As soon as I learned my work needs only had to cover my minimalist desires, I said hurrah to the grind, and it cured my depression. Story 13. Enjoying eating food. I worked with someone who would have loved a pill that would give them all the nutrients and calories they needed. It's something that is completely foreign to me. Answer: this is my dream. Trying to keep myself fed is the struggle I have to deal with every single day, multiple times a day. I'm very bad at it. The planning, the prep, taking the time to actually consume the food. I dislike how onerous it is. I would gladly give up the enjoyable part of tasting yummy food if it meant I no longer have to stress about buying, making, and eating things. I dislike being hungry, and I dislike how dysfunctional I am when I'm starving. Yet it seems that every day I procrastinate the steps I need to take to feed myself, so then I'm insanely hungry and have no energy to feed myself. Story 14. When my wife and I were dating the subject, if kids came up, I was reluctant to discuss it because this was when things tended to fall apart. Told her I had no interest and no reason to believe my mind would change. She stopped, looked at me and said, "No kids?" You can do that? Apparently it never occurred to her that not having kids was an option. Answer: at least she realized before having kids. When I was 11 with 3 siblings, I asked my mom why she had kids. It broke her brain a little, I think. She sat there stunned for a couple of minutes and then said, it's just what you did. I don't think it ever occurred to her there was another option. She did not like being a parent. I wish we would normalize not having kids as an option. Story 15. When I was a little girl, I thought it was mandatory to get pregnant at some point, and it made me really depressed. And that's how I knew I didn't want kids, lol. Story 16. Being career-driven, and by way of that, playing all the necessary games to climb the ladder in the workplace, as opposed to just working to live. Answer: yep, I finally saw the light a few years ago that I just didn't care about that shoot anymore. I just couldn't take the corporate bullshit, and actually recently got fired as I just stopped kissing jerk like everyone else there. I ran into a bunch of former coworkers who all said their lives were so much better after leaving. Not sure what I will do, and I will probably never make that kind of money again, but I know I will be happier than before. I don't understand the people that make their work their whole identity. Story 17. When I was 19, I got into the commercial salmon industry, sustainable in Alaska, and met guys working up there who lived in other countries for the rest of the year without working. So for the next 6 years, I worked my jerk off for 2 months each summer, getting better positions and pay. This is the first year that I finally lived off 2 months' salary for the remaining 10 months. I literally do whatever I want every day, just living minimally in Asia. It rocks. Story 18. Not participating in holidays with family, not because I don't like them, but because I just don't want to do it. I travel instead and see family at other times. Turns out you can do that, and it's fine. Story 19. I got rid of my stove and put in a cabinet. It's a really pretty cabinet, and it has my single induction burner. I bake cupcakes and cookies in my air fryer. It turns out you can just make your home be whatever works for you. There are no rules. Answer: when I was looking for an apartment for grad school, I kept getting hung up on where I was going to have my study and also have room for a dining table. Eventually, I realized I don't have to have a dining table. I'm here to study. My living room is half living room and half library, and I can eat at my desk. It allowed me to choose the right place for me, where I have lived for many years now. Story 20. I thought holding on was mandatory. I didn't know it was possible to choose to just let go. All of my problems, all of the people in my life who hurt me, I just let go of them. I didn't know that was an option until I did. Coming to peace now. Story 21. Believing that mental health problems, anxiety specifically, had to be kept entirely to yourself because people would believe you were using it for attention. Recently, I had to explain some odd behaviors to my boss. I had so many different ways to properly explain the anxiety to him, and once I said it, he just accepted it. He just said, that would explain it. If you feel the need to, just let it out. Take 5 and do whatever you need to. I'm still freaked out over it. Story 22. At least basic cleanliness is a sign you had access to it. The number of spoiled college boys who will insist on going 4 or 5 days without a shower and stinking up a classroom. Story 23. Sharing a bed and a room with your partner, if you have a partner. I have a friend who lives with her boyfriend, but they each have their own bedroom and therefore separate beds. Turns out it's not just a silly Hollywood trope from the 1950s. Story 24. Doing the job you're paid to do. Turns out tons of people just take the paycheck and F off. It never occurred to me you could do that without repercussions, like being fired, until I worked in corporate America. Story 25. Washing your hands after using the restroom. The number of men that I've seen come out of a stall and then head straight out the door is mind-boggling. Story 26. I met my friend's uncle in the early 2000s. No kids, no wife, just sat around and played video games every day after work. I didn't know that was an option at the time. This was before streaming or anything. I knew I wanted to be like him one day. And here I am, story 27. Obligatory warning, don't try this at home. My brother never went to a single jury summons. I didn't know that was possible. He died young, 36, but that's still 18 years worth of skipping out on jury duty without anyone bothering him about it. Maybe it would have caught up to him eventually, but I guess he won that war by dying. Answer, I will argue that everyone should want to do jury duty to keep society running. One day you will be accused of a crime. Who do you want determining your fate? A group of educated peers who will analyze the evidence and determine your innocence? Or a group of dumbasses so stupid they couldn't even get out of jury duty? Who will be swayed by appeals to emotion? Story 28. I always assumed that a guy would basically rather chew his own arm off to escape than deal with a high-emotion situation with a woman, especially in the early days of dating. I was proven wrong by my now husband about a month after we met. We were hanging out at my place one day when my roommate and best friend had a serious medical emergency. In spite of being absolutely terrified, I pretended to be fine and casually suggested he could head on home as I was go to the hospital. He saw right through my act, and instead of taking the out I gave him, he gave me a huge hug and insisted on spending the rest of the day with me waiting in Emerge. He even drove us home after. So that was pretty much the day I decided to keep him forever. Answer: I went traveling with a friend of mine, and we had been stuffed around by the airline on both ends of this flight and being sent around the airport like mad geese. I'm autistic, and I hit the wall and had a meltdown. I dislike being visibly emotional around other people so much, but I had no reserves left for that mask. My friend is a bit the same. My friend just sat me down at a table in an area with less foot traffic with my carry-on and said he'd deal with it, and he did. He came back with my ticket, and we were off, and he's never held it against me. Story 29. There's a guy at work that doesn't have a smartphone. He is in his 40s and just never wanted one. He has a dumb phone, but he just uses it for text and calling. There's nothing else on it. I wish I could do that. I feel like it would be more peaceful. Story 30. I live in America for context. I always thought that standing up and saying the pledge was something you had to do, or you'd get in trouble between kindergarten and 7th grade until my friend told me otherwise. Answer: I had one teacher that had us do this a couple times, and even as a 78-year-old, I was super uncomfortable with it. And I remember thinking that swearing blind allegiance to anything seemed like a terrible idea. This topic came up once with a friend whose family moved here from Germany when she was young, and she says the practice absolutely horrified her. She said her German school actively taught the dangers of blind allegiance to governments. Story 31. Not mandatory, but listening to music. Met someone when asked what they like to listen to, replied, "I'm not really into music. I pressed the issue because I couldn't believe it." Same response. Story 32. Having intimacy. I am attracted to people and get excited for it, but as soon as pants come off, everything goes flat. Totally lose all interest and get the ick. This obviously makes no sense. So I spent most of my 20s racking up a body count that would make me a Khalifa blush, trying to figure out what was missing and pretending that I liked whatever my partner liked. When I met my boyfriend, he was very upfront about being ace, explaining that he was open to intimacy and the plumbing worked, but it would never be more exciting than eating or breathing. It would never be his idea, and really he'd prefer to do literally anything else together. I'd never heard of anything like that before, or that you could have a romantic relationship without intimacy. We've been together 3 years, have a dog, and are talking about getting married. I've had to pretend to enjoy swallowing 0 times. It's heaven. Story 33. Picking an aesthetic, whether it be your personal style, your home, etc., and sticking to it. For example, I love to mix traditional Western and Mexican style stuff with things like disco balls, bright clothing that you might see at raves, or bats in goth style. People look at me weird because they can't figure me out, but I absolutely love my style, and it fits me. Your style and what brings you joy is for you. Who gives AF what other people think? It took me until I was 35 to figure this out. There is nothing better than living life with zero fudge or concerns about how others want to classify you. Story 34. I told my work colleague my husband and I have separate rooms for a number of reasons, different sleep schedules, etc. And she said to me, "Oh, you can just do that?" Story 35. I always thought everyone's brain was constantly thinking about something, but it wasn't until I was diagnosed with ADHD that I realized it's actually a condition. Story 36. I worked with a guy who vacationed for 6 months of the year and worked for 6 months, living very frugally. His summers were spent hiking in Spain, taking photos of very small orchids. When I met him, he was working as a software engineer on a 6-month contract in Antwerp. He was living in a tent at a closed campsite at the side of the Antwerp Ring Road, sometimes with snow on the ground, but he could walk to work. Story 37. Trying your best. I was raised to always do my best. So I always tried very hard, and I am a perfectionist. I couldn't imagine doing a bad job or not being helpful. In my profession, I realized about half the people don't actually do their best. Being a try-hard was beneficial to me in a lot of ways. But now I'm tired of being the person that everyone depends on or expects to do everything that's hard. I'm 33 now, and this is the first year I've really just stopped trying to be the hero at work, and it's great. Story 38. Marriage. You can have a long and happy married life with house, kids, pets, etc. without being married. The money spent on some weddings would make a very nice deposit on a house. Story 39. Eating meat. I saw vegetarians on TV or in the media, but never really thought I could do the same. Until I met several people in university that were, and it helped me understand that it was something I could do too. Edit. Forgot a word. Story 40. going to the doctor's, hospital, or calling an ambulance without thinking about any financial issues. Growing up in the 80s and 90s pre-internet, I wasn't aware of how other countries handled it. In one of my first jobs, we had someone on the team who moved over from the US. One day they slipped on some ice, and the manager offered to run them down to AE. It was then we found out that it is very different elsewhere. Story 41. Having to explain myself when I won't come along, especially with acquaintances. No, I don't have to tell them a 400-word story as to why. A short no is sufficient. Story 42. Hugging everyone goodbye at the end of a night's hang at a club or house party. In college, I had a friend who just left. When she was ready for her bed at night, nobody ever said anything negative about the behavior. So next time I felt too exhausted for the extensive goodbye rituals, I tried it. It was liberating. I recommend it to anyone. Story 43. I know that I can't remember it specifically, but whenever it was that I found out, people consciously don't return their shopping carts. Story 44. Assumed it was normal for men to find other women attractive and go to strip clubs when in relationships until my ex-fiance's most recent ex. Story 45. When you get into an elevator, there is no rule that says you have to turn around and face the door. It's quite funny to watch people squirm when you face them instead of the door. Story 46. Uni senior year girlfriend, me. I have to hustle to party venue to get a pass for tonight's party before they are gone. GF, why? Me. Because it's a party with beer. We have to go. GF, why? Me. Because it's a party. GF, do you like the crappy beer they serve? Me. No. GF, do you like the band that's playing? Me. No. GF, you're guaranteed as much intimacy with me as you can handle tonight. Were you hoping to hook up with someone else at this party? Me. No. GF. Okay, so what's the urgency for getting entry passes again? Me. FOMO. GF. Are you afraid of missing out on the beer you don't like, the music you don't like, the cigarette smoke you don't like, or the off chance to hook up when you've got a sure thing with me? Me. None of the above. GF. So I don't think you need to worry about missing this party. Me. Story 47. Having a child. I always knew I never wanted kids, but I didn't realize for a while that I actually had a choice in the matter. God bless the amazing child-free women living their best lives who made me know that I wasn't broken and would live a great life. Story 48. Having intimacy. I went my whole teen life sick over the thought that one day I'd have to deal with that, which was mortifying to me. Story 49. Realizing I didn't have to jump for people the second they insinuated something. I actually didn't have to do anything unless they properly communicated their needs. Story 50. Giving a fudge like it feels good to care about people and passions, but those should be personal to you. Don't care just because others do or they tell you to. Story 51. A lot of the BS traits my family taught me was normal. I'm sorry to all the people I hurt with toxic behaviors I thought was part of life. I regret it took me so long to realize it was me who was the problem. Story 52. Eating meat dairy. I was raised under a rock in Louisiana. I didn't go to middle or high school at all, so didn't have friends for the most part. At 17, I found a vegan outreach flyer and decided to just stop. I never really felt comfortable eating animals, but didn't realize I could opt out. Story 53. Not wanting to be in relationships. Meeting other asexual aromantic people made me feel less like I had to be obligated to be in a non-platonic relationship. It's not a huge deal, but letting go of the social stigma that it's something you are expected of in life is nice. Story 54. Had a coworker in a manual labor job that just chose to not wear deodorant of any sort. Not like I won't wear those chemical cocktails big deodorant pushes. I'll choose my all-natural stick made of bee pollen and flowers. Nope, just none at all, ever. He was impossible to be near. Story 55. Filling up your gas tank while the car's running. Edit to answer the question directly. I always assumed shutting off the car before filling your gas tank was mandatory. Answer, having worked several gas station jobs, I will say that it is somehow a fire risk. It is recommended by the training video to shut off the pump immediately if you see someone pump gas into a running vehicle, but we never stopped anyone and it was never an issue. Must be a very low chance. The training also told us one of the biggest fire risks is people getting back into their car while pumping because of static electricity, but that never caused a problem either. These things all have a very small chance of causing any fires or issues, but they still can. Story 56. Relationships fraught with strife. I have always been married to people with extreme baggage. My current partner is so well adjusted and I feel like an entirely new person. Story 57. 1. Learning or trying to do something yourself. Some people dislike learning. Some are lazy and prefer leeching off others. 2. bathing, showering at least once a day, or if that fails, then make sure the morning right after. I am still shocked after finding out some people go days without. 3. Met a colleague who has never had sugar or sugary stuff in years. He is the most in-shape guy. Story 58. I used to think having kids was just the next thing you did after getting married. But then I met older people who didn't have kids, who led rich and fulfilling lives with no regrets. It made me realize I didn't have to have children. I chose not to have kids, and despite the judgment of some people for it, I have no regrets. Story 59. A banana sandwich. Suddenly realized other people hadn't tried one. I suddenly found myself questions many other parts of life. Story 60. Having empathy for your fellow man, or any living creature for that matter. Some people do not seem to give a fudge, and it's so sad. Story 61. Ironing. I quit almost 30 years ago. An acquaintance mentioned that he quit ironing, and I had that moment. Life is so much better now. As long as I grab the clothes when the dryer stops and put them on hangers, I don't need an iron. Story 62. Using alarms to wake up in the morning. My current partner almost never relies on alarm to wake up at 6 a.m. for work every day, even after staying up until 2 a.m. He just naturally wakes up in time. Absolutely baffles me. Has only been late a handful of times. Story 63. Cleaning belly buttons. I work in a nursing home, also finding out navel stones are a real thing. Who lets their belly button get that dirty? Answer. This reminds me of when my mom told me to never touch my belly button. I was a child, and then she passed away when I was 14. I never cleaned my belly button until pus started coming out. I must have been 24. I freaked out, went to ER, and they pulled out so much pink lint. It stunk. Poor doctor puked. He said clean it just like the rest of your body daily. Story 64. I've always assumed that healthy eating was 3 square meals a day. Actually, I can get all required veggies and fruit between one meal and snacking before bed, and found out that it'll survive if I can afford less than that for a prolonged time. I feel much better that I don't have to fill up 3 times a day. Story 65. Cleaning up after yourself, and when cooking, cleaning, putting things away as you go. Growing up, it seemed like a basic, decent human skill to not leave a place worse than you found it. Turns out most adults feel no sense of responsibility for the messes they make. Story 66. I am not advocating for this, but I had a coworker who told me that every time he gets a jury summons in the mail, he shreds it and tosses it, claims nothing has ever happened in his almost 60 years, and just say they have no way to prove I received it. In Cali, if that's relevant. Story 67. Owning a TV. Knew a family when I was a kid that didn't have a TV, and it initially felt really odd. Now I'm the one that doesn't own a TV. Radio and a PC are really all I need, and it means that my living room can be for proper social interactions. Story 68. I related a story to a friend about applying to the college of my dreams and making arrangements to move in with relatives well in advance so that I could qualify for in-state tuition. And when I was accepted, my parents said no, so I didn't go. And my friend said, well, you had everything taken care of, so why didn't you just go? I was stunned. It never crossed my mind that I could disobey my parents. Story 69. Going to family dinners and holiday dinners. I come from a Jewish family, and holiday dinners are the pinnacle of the year regarding my family. It's always a pain, and people ask uncomfortable questions, and the discussions are hurtful. I went out with a woman a few months ago that told me she just don't go. She made it clear to her family that she's out of that game and doesn't want to participate. She loves her parents and one of her sisters, but the dynamics just don't do her good. I just stared at her dumbstruck like, is that an option? The best part is that I use that knowledge to duck the few last holidays. It's not a burden anymore. Story 70. Drinking adult beverage. I assumed it was just part of adulthood, but plenty of people skip it entirely. Story 71. Giving your time to people who don't deserve it. I was always raised to be polite to people, even to listen to the whole spiel when a solicitor comes knocking on your door, and to wait for a break before saying, sorry, not interested, and then wait until they acknowledge defeat and leave before going back inside. A month ago, I just silently walked back into the house and locked the door on some guy who was mid-sentence about a new roof. It was immensely freeing. Answer? Gosh, I wish I was taught this as a child, because I too did that song and dance for so long before I realized I have every right to just bail when someone invades my space to sell me something. Just hanging up the phone when it's obviously a telemarketer, or just continuing on when some clipboard guy wearing a logo tries to flag me down. We really don't owe random salespeople pleasantries. Story 72. Working 5 days a week. I have had so many different jobs. Working as a teacher was my first career, and even though it was MF, those holidays and summers sure make up for it. Now I'm into my second career, haven't worked 5 days, nor an 8-hour day in years. I did long hospital shifts, mostly 8 and sometimes 12, only night shift, but that was over 5 years ago. When I worked for someone, I never worked Fridays. I'd rather work 4 10s to get the 40, and even then I wasn't working the entire time. Now I'm self-employed, and I love that I've gotten to a point in my life where I can make my own schedule and work minimum hours to make ends meet. Story 73. Wear actual pajamas or dedicated sleeping clothes to bed. My boyfriend wears whatever he wore that day to bed, or cargo shorts, and it drives me crazy. I bought him several different pairs of sleep pants and shorts for him. But no, he's going to wear his cargo shorts to bed. This is one of 3 main issues with him, and I'm trying to correct. The other 2 are the lack of table manners and the fact that he reorganizes the kitchen every other week, and we still haven't figured out where he put the battery and charger for the vacuum after the last time he reorganized. Answer: so he wears the clothes he's been sweating and getting dirty in all day to bed, thus dirtying the bedding? Does he get undressed, take a shower, then put the dirty clothes back on? Or does he just get into bed as filthy as the clothes he is wearing? Do you have to strip and change the bed every day? And he has no table manners? Was he raised by wolves? Most important question to TF, are you staying with this guy? Story 74. Old Bay on crabs. I met someone from Massachusetts who didn't know what I was talking about when I offhandedly mentioned Old Bay. He said he didn't know what it was. I said if he had eaten crabs before, he had Old Bay. He insisted he had never consumed Old Bay. I didn't know Old Bay was a regional thing. I thought Old Bay was as necessary as heat when cooking crabs. I do not want to try crabs without Old Bay. Not even a little curious, just repulsed. Story 75. Being in a relationship or trying to be in one. I had no idea you could be single and happy, let alone intentionally single and happy. Story 76. Turns out, there are people who start their Sunday mornings by not going to church. Apparently, you can just do whatever you want. I learned that when I left for college at 18 and met a non-Christian adult for the first time. They just do whatever they want. Want to go on a hike? You don't have to schedule for 3 p.m. Just go whenever. Want to watch the early NFL game? You can do that too. Want to make breakfast? Turns out you don't have to wake up at 5 so you can make breakfast and get to service by 9 a.m. You can just make it whenever. Story 77. Listening to my parents, when my mom tried to hit me after she got really mad, I grabbed her wrist and Loki blocked it. I'm far too old for her to ever put her hands on me. Story 78. Taking the high road. I met this girl in grade 6 AMD. When someone told her that her shoes were ugly, she told them that at least she wasn't trying to make themselves feel better by picking on other people. She didn't even say it rude, just stated it the way you would say it was cloudy out. She then turned back to our conversation and refused to acknowledge the person. I asked her why later, and she told me people who don't want to like her, she doesn't want them to like her either. She didn't want to waste her energy being nice to someone who starts the conversation by teasing her. I thought that was interesting. You can only imagine how when a boy punched her best friend in the stomach, she slapped him so hard, he fell back and then told the teacher what happened, including her slapping him. And then the teacher asked why she slapped him. She said it was so he wouldn't hurt people again. Violence isn't the answer, but this girl was brutal for an 11-year-old. She was actually really sweet and would give her lunch to kids who couldn't afford their own. She was an absolute angel. However, she was very firm that no one could harmful behavior that or her. I thought of that as my first idea when I saw this question. Story 79. I was always the one blowing people's minds with what's not an actual requirement. I grew up in a family where our needs were met and no more, in a very small middle-class town in the middle of nowhere in the Great Plains. You can actually go without a whole lot when it's not available in the first place, and it was the norm for me. It took moving somewhere else where there was actually stuff for me to even realize how much people have available to them. Story 80. Explaining when you say no. No is a complete answer. If you say no, I can't, then no reason needs to be given. Story 81. Using washcloths when bathing or loofah or some sort of exfoliation methods. I thought it was a joke. Story 82. Brushing your teeth. I always felt somewhat self-conscious, guilty because I only brush once a day and hardly ever floss. But I was talking to a coworker one day who said they brushed maybe once a month if their teeth felt dirty. I felt a bit better about my own hygiene habits after that. Story 83. CCD, catechism. I always thought it was required like school. I approached my mom about it when I was a young teen after a friend said he didn't have to go. She told me I had to go if I ever wanted to get married. I believed her. I'm still pissed that I did this until I was 17. Google didn't exist yet. Story 84. Brushing your teeth before you go to bed. My teeth just feel so gross if I don't do it. But now I've met and married divorced someone, people who didn't make this a part of their nightly routine. Story 85. Being cisgender. One day I met someone who I couldn't tell the intimacy of in middle school, and I asked if they were a boy or girl. They said both, and my brain just disconnected and rebooted for a second. Like, that's an option? To add on, being not straight. I used to play date with toys as a little kid and imagine myself with a loving wife, but then think to myself, oh, I can't have a wife. I'm a girl. I have to have a husband. 13 years later, 18 years old, and I'm a roast and non-binary, not planning to have any spouse. Story 86. Paying for parking. Usually I get like 1 or 2 tickets a year. Still way cheaper than actually paying for parking. Story 87. Going to college, this was not my thought, but the thoughts of most people. Also paying tickets, there are people who will never pay their tickets. Eventually, they just get a certain deal instead of paying a shoot ton of money. If you miss ticket payment, the government starts threatening with double price. Most people want to handle it right away, but some just say, fudge you, I'm never going to pay, and they really don't. That kind of makes me jealous, despite the trouble they could be in. I kind of want to rebel too. Story 88. Having social media. I was born in 2000 and it just seemed so obvious to have at least Facebook and Instagram until I met my ex in 2017 who had a phone number only to contact him. Since then, I'm having social media free months, currently on my longest break, going for more than 6 months with only Messenger and occasionally Reddit or Pinterest. I kind of miss Instagram now, but I might just push through and never reactivate my profile unless I actually have a reason for it. Life is simply better. No games on my phone as well. Story 89. Stopping for street sales charity people in the UK. They are good at reeling you in. And with British politeness, it's hard to just firmly say no. Was walking with my Greek friend who just said, nope, without even breaking stride. Blew my mind. Of course, I have to add sorry on the end now, but realizing I could just keep walking instead of changing direction or pretending to be on the phone was freeing. Answer, LOL. I feel like this is me and my husband. When we are out and people come up to us to try to sell something or whatever, I just completely ignore them and keep walking. My husband was the one who will stop and listen to the whole thing before saying no thanks. Now, he doesn't stop as often and can sometimes just says no thanks and keep walking. He is getting there, Lemafo. Story 90. Rushing. Then I met my partner who does things slow. Slowed down a little in life. Not everything has to be rushed. Story 91. I always assumed everyone had some clear life plan. Then I met people just going day by day, and they seemed fine, lol. Story 92. Saying no when you truly mean no is liberating. It's liberating to simply not do what you don't want to do. I constantly see people complaining that they went to some event, went out with someone they didn't like, or always did something they didn't want to do because they didn't know how to say no. Story 93. As a kid, I thought I had to get married and have kids. My mom and grandmothers made it seem like that's all I was on this earth to do. I think it wasn't until my late teens and early 20s that I started meeting older couples without kids and women without husbands' children. It was such a relief to know I wasn't the only one or that there wasn't something wrong with me for not wanting that life. My family isn't happy about it, but it's my life, not theirs. Story 94. A wedding. You can have all the benefits of the joint tax return and a healthy marriage without a wedding. The choices aren't even huge party versus cold courthouse. And officiants don't have to be religious. Your friend can become a county clerk designee, and you can get married pretty much anywhere with a minimum of 1 officiant and 2 witnesses over 18. Pictures were important to me, so we took some, and it wasn't even on the same day. You do not have to do any of the traditional or expected things. And if you want one thing but not the other thing, you can do that too. Cake but no guests? You can. Pictures but no party? Allowed. Some supportive family but no toxic other family? Sure thing. There are no wedding police. Story 95. My sister stopped matching socks in college. Decades later, I still match mine because I'm an idiot. But seriously, why do we care about sock matching? If anyone sees your socks, 90 of the time they don't care, and 90 of the time they don't see both at the same time. Why do I take the time to ensure that I have matching socks every day? Story 96. I realized far too late that I just simply don't have to be in contact with an harmful behavior parent. I spent years with everyone making excuses for them, dealing with their lying, manipulation, constantly gossiping about me, and one day I just stopped letting them in my life, lol. It was weird how I never thought about how I could just do that. Story 97. Getting married or having kids. One of my friends completely together, owns her home and cars, travels if she feels like it, spoils all of her friends and family, and she is happy doing whatever the F she wants whenever she wants. Unencumbered. Story 98. Having kids. Everyone talked about it like it was a part of life as sure as passing. When you have your own kids, when you become a mother, when you raise your own kids, etc. It was always communicated like it was a part of life that was undoubtedly going to happen. Turns out no. It's perfectly optional, and talking about it that way is part of convincing you it's not entirely your choice whether you have them or not. Story 99. Enjoying life sober. My parents didn't drink or smoke anything. My mom doesn't even drink caffeine. I drink a beer occasionally and drink a cup of coffee in the morning. So many of the young adults working today act like they can't function mentally, emotionally, or physically without 400 milligrams of caffeine, Xanax, Zoloft, or Adderall, and some THC on a daily basis. It's just weird to me. Answer. It's just what a lot of people grew up around. A lot of times it gets worse through the generations. My husband and I both have moms that don't drink. He doesn't drink coffee, caffeine. I have a cup of tea a day, sometimes none. Drinking in social settings, sure. We have access to THC, but never care for it. It's been many years since I cared to partake. Both our sets of parents and siblings don't smoke or do substances. We live a very full life. It definitely feels rare to meet people like us, but we're out there. Story 100. Responding to or listening to voicemail or voice messages. We had an efficiency consultant come into work and suggest that most people waste their time having too many ways for other people to reach them. She said we should direct everyone to one single way of contacting us. I decided email was the way I was going and stopped listening to or responding to any voicemail. I'd delete all of them and let people come find me. It literally never had any negative impact, but freed up my time. Story 101. Nonconformist, like maybe I'm the one doing it wrong all these years. They always seem to be making it. Story 102. Recently, it was cleaning my family's messes. I blamed my family for putting the pressure on me to do it BC they have and do sometimes. I completely said no for weeks, and there was no problem through them. I just can't stand it being dirty somewhat. I'm eventually clean some. Story 103. Wearing shorts at work, I wore jeans forever till I saw a dude on night shift wear shorts. We can do that? Haven't worn a pair of pants since LeMayo. Story 104. Cleaning. Like he sometimes cleaned and did laundry and dishes, but if it was a mess everywhere, he just didn't care. He would do it when he does it. Story 105. I assume that eliminate and stealing are wrong for us, but those who make the laws in this world do it every day. Story 106. Acknowledging people's existence and answering questions. I always disliked when people were rude or hostile and always just sort of assumed I had to answer when being questioned. But after seeing that American Dad episode where Stan snaps everyone gone, out of his reality, I had an epiphany. I can do the same whenever anyone upsets me. I can't see him. I can't hear him. They no longer exist, and my troubles disappeared with them. I also don't have to answer any question anyone asks if I don't want to. Nobody can legally force an answer. Story 107. Having children and living the nuclear family ideal, and I'm glad I found out when I did. I also discovered that you don't have to be in a monogamous relationship forever until to die, which was also a plus. Story 108. I was an only child for almost 10 years until my brother came along. It wasn't until I was in community college that he, middle school, started severely struggling with his mental health. He started refusing to go to school with every ounce of iron will in his body. My parents put mountains of effort in every method under the sun to get him to go to school. I was directly in the middle of this chaos because I was in charge of driving him to school every day. I was shocked what a fight he put up. I was also severely depressed around his age, plus struggling with a truly debilitating, then undiagnosed neurological sleep disorder. But I never questioned my duty to go to school. Going to school was just the thing that had to be done no matter what. I didn't like school, but it never even crossed my mind that I was choosing to go every day. Blew my mind. Also, not saying I'm better than him. Everyone's struggle is different, of course, and we're both doing much, much better currently. Story 109. Shaving my legs, or any other body hair for that matter. I kind of thought it was what I was supposed to do since that's what all women did. But when I realized that I didn't actually have to, I started shaving less and less. Story 110. Ironing clothes, having tablecloth on the table every day and ironing them before putting them on. Changing the curtains to Christmas curtains and spring curtains and Easter ones and summer curtains. I have my own home. I put a tablecloth on only if I am having people over for dinner, and then I mist it with a water bottle a few hours before setting the table because it will look flat enough. I don't have any curtains, not even curtain rods, because I like the look of my windows without, and I don't iron clothes. My husband irons a shirt in the morning if he wants to wear one. I only own clothes that don't need ironing. The hours I save compared to how my mother and her friends keep house. TBH mostly spent on Reddit and other nonsense, but still. Story 111. that you have to be passionate about your career or your work, that you have to be passionate about the job you decide to work at. I mean, sure, it makes life sometimes a bit easier, but it confused me for so long as a young adult that I couldn't find that spark that made me go, oh yes, I want to work in this specific job for the rest of my life, and made me feel worried that there was something wrong with me. Story 112. My sister has been with the same guy for like 15 years. They are, for all intents and purposes, married but just didn't do the paperwork, and they don't claim to be married. Story 113. Complaining about your spouse, finding them annoying. My ex-husband loved to get together with his buddies so they could all sit around and shoot-talk their wives. My friends' husbands were the same. My now husband of almost 20 years has never done that about me. I know this because his friends and even coworkers would joke about it to me, and my husband would actively demonstrate that he preferred my company and would rather spend time with me and our kids than go hang out with the guys. Story 114. Listening and paying attention to the lyrics of songs. My stepdad pays zero attention to the words of songs, says he just listens to the music. Such a crazy concept to me. I cannot even pretend to ignore the lyrics. The words are the most important part to me. I guess we all consume entertainment and art in our own ways. Story 115. Accountability to oneself and others. My ex-pretty just flushed me down the toilet with no explanation. Story 116. Believing in God. I thought we all had to believe until the year 2000 when I was 26. I asked a coworker of mine if she believed in God. She simply said, no. It was the first time ever that I had met or even known of someone who didn't believe. Story 117. I always thought monogamy and marriage were mandatory. The things you do in life. They're everything I've ever wanted. But now I've been curious about ethical non-monogamy and polyamory. My BF and I knew another couple on kind of the same journey, so we said fudge it and went for it. Our quad's been together for almost 3 years now. Story 118. Practicing to be good at something. I've met people with natural talent who are immediately good at things, and it's mildly infuriating. Story 119. Going to church. I grew up in a very religious part of the world, and although my parents weren't ultra-religious, they still had Christian hangovers from their own childhoods. I was really little when my mom started working on Sundays and gave my dad strict instructions to get my sisters and I off to church Sunday school in the morning. I remember dragging myself out of bed, putting on my awful wool leggings and scratchy 80s prairie dress, ready to go like Mom had instructed, only to find my dad in the living room, still in his pajamas, watching soccer. I was like, what about church, Dad? And he just said, we're not going. Don't tell your mom. The feeling of liberty was so beautiful, it honestly still makes me smile to this day to remember it. Ditched the outfit and enjoyed my Sunday. Thanks, Dad. We managed to keep it from our mom for several months. Shortly after, I stopped believing in God, and that was equally liberating and amazing. Story 120. I haven't owned a car in 4 years, motorcycle only. Car price is too high, I refuse to buy. Edit, before it said, I can't do it cause weather. I live in central KY, so I've ridden in single and triple digit temps. Story 121. Being okay without comparing myself to people all the time. Like not mandatory, but the more I interact with people and foster connections, the more I realize many people compare every single thing with others in the name of healthy competition, where the line between healthy and obsessive is blurred. Story 122. Opening mail addressed to you, not Ada, actual mail. At least skimming emails before deleting. Had an employee who never responded to anything when discussed. He mentioned he just deletes when his inbox is full, never reads a single email. He was fired subsequently. Filing taxes. Story 123. I always thought jury duty was mandatory because that's what the paper says. My pal ex-roommate from the 1980s always tossed his notices in the garbage bin. We're now in our 60s and he's done it all these years with zero issue. Story 124. Meeting a remote work before the COVID switch up. It was just always the way to work 9 to 5, and I was mentally preparing myself for that for the next 40 years. Guy just turned that on its head, had some amazing stories, and seemed even more well-adjusted than everyone in my office. Definitely the inspiration for my lifestyle now, and never going back. Story 125. Most people are shocked to find out I grew up fairly absent of religion, was not taught religion, did not grow up going to any church, and am an atheist adult with very little, if any, thoughts about higher powers. People cannot imagine that it's an option to just not believe in God. My life is completely normal. I just don't think about it. Story 126. Being able to speak your parents' native language or teaching your kids your native language. I was so confused when I'd meet people whose parents just straight up refused to teach them Spanish or Mandarin. Now I know the reasons why, but it baffled me. Story 127. Talking things out. I always assume that when you have a fight with your partner, there has to be a moment when you actually listen to each other and try to understand why it happened. Because, barring exceptional circumstances, nobody is ever 100 right or wrong. And then I met someone who is, in her view, always 100 right, and whose idea of let's talk about it is to monologue about my many unforgivable flaws while refusing to listen to anything I have to say. It's disconcerting, to put it lightly. Story 128. Wearing makeup every day. Used to do a full face every day, no matter what, even to just nip down to the supermarket. Now I don't bother except for if I'm going out and doing something interesting. Nothing bad happened when people saw my eye bags or acne scars, and now I have an extra half an hour every day to do whatever I want. Story 129. Eating meat. A deck how I thought vegans existed, TBH, because I genuinely thought you needed meat to live. Story 130. Maintenance. Self-maintenance. Animals you frivolously decided to adopt maintenance. Maintaining your vehicle in the home in which you live. Simply put, taking daily showers and brushing your teeth, mowing your lawn, washing, folding, and putting away laundry. Getting your oil changed and your tires rotated. Shoveling dog poop once or twice a week. Basic shoot. Story 131. Honestly praying and believing in God. Until late high school, I never really met anyone who didn't. And when my ex told me he was atheist, I didn't even know what it meant. Pretty fun. Story 132. Having a microwave at home, I just assumed everyone had one for the convenience until I met a colleague that didn't. He just heated things on the stove. Story 133. Giving an explanation when saying no. I met someone who just plainly said no, and I sat there waiting for an explanation, and they offered none. In my mind, I thought, wow, you can do that? LOL. Story 134. Separating colors and whites for the laundry. He would put whatever in the washing machine and then everything in the dryer. Never hung out any clothing. Didn't even have a clothes hanger. To be fair, he mostly wore sports clothes. Story 135. Shaving your armpits. Until I saw my partner naked. Took about a month or so and I stopped doing it. Also stopped worrying about the hairs on my shoulders. It's just hair. Story 136. 7th grade bus ride to school. I commented to my friend that the homework was quite difficult. She shrugged and told me she didn't do it. I asked for further explanation and she said, I gave up. I'll take the 0. My flabbers were gasted. I had no clue you could simply opt out and accept the consequences. I was an overachiever, born to overachievers. It was certainly not an option I'd ever even considered and wouldn't have been allowed for me anyway. Story 137. Cooking, especially cutting food. I've always assumed that was just something people were taught by default. And even if they weren't directly taught, they would find a way to learn. So finding out some people legitimately did not know how to cook was very surprising. Story 138. Basically, everyone in my family, and then also my first partner, husband, did not communicate about feelings. My more recent partner asked why I never brought up my emotions, and I had to say I thought men disliked that. It took some getting used to, but I see the appeal. Story 139. I thought that everyone, no matter how crazy they went when they were young, would want to settle down and get married eventually, even if the marriage was non-monogamous or not a legal marriage, but a long-term partnership. I was very surprised when my friend told me she never wants that. She was mid-30s as well, so old enough to have thought about it. Story 140. Coming from a family of harmful behavior and alcoholism, seeing my then-boyfriend's parents get into an argument that didn't involve name-calling or yelling blew my teenage mind. Story 141. One of my husband's aunts never did any housework. I had been warned, but wasn't sure what to expect. We visited her and the house was full of litter and detritus. It hadn't been decorated ever. The tables were overflowing with odds and ends, and we only had tea because she had bought new mugs. She literally never ever cleaned or tidied up, and her family were only able to keep their own bedrooms clean when they were old enough to do it themselves. Story 142. When my wife and I first started dating, we had lots of little misunderstandings. I thought she just knew how I was feeling without me saying it and knew when I was just being agreeable. I decided to end the relationship a month in. She told me I just needed to tell her what I wanted and needed. So I did, and she said okay, and immediately started doing what I asked. First time in my life, I was able to directly tell someone what I needed from them and be heard. Story 143. Wiping your jerk after you take a shoot. This just grosses me out. I can't believe that there are people out there that think it's gay to make sure their jerk is clean and will not leave skid marks on their underwear. Story 144. Jury duty. My best friend and mentor ignored jury notices. He would say, "Can they prove you got it? Did they send it certified mail?" If I have to go before a judge, he'll simply assert that I never received any jury notices, and the burden will be on them to prove that I did, and they can't. He never replied and never had any issues ever. Story 145. You don't have to have insurance or pay your medical bills. Now, I don't recommend it, so please don't come for me, and I'm sure it could backfire spectacularly. But for my personal situation, it works out well. I flatlined in 2017, so I kind of view my time now like an extra life in a video game. I've made it further than I was supposed to, so I'm DNR now if anything happens. If something is minor, I'll be okay. If something is major, hey, I'm gonna die anyway. May as well die from it and not be hella in debt. I came to the decision after I had my own insurance for the first time, not through my parents' plan, had been paying X amount of money for so long, and it still didn't cover what I needed. I figured, what was the point of giving them money if they wouldn't help when I needed it? So I got rid of my insurance. That was a little under a decade ago. I pay my bills at the county health department where I get my BC and regular tests done, and I buy my blood tests online and handle it myself, so it's never been a problem. Once a medical bill goes to a debt collector, it becomes a HIPAA violation, and I've used that to have them removed through Credit Karma. Again, I do not recommend this at all. If you find out you have cancer, you may be able to get medicine to give you 10 more years with your family through insurance. You never know. But for me personally, it's saved a lot of money over time. Fudge the U.S. healthcare system. Edit. To clarify for your inference, I'm talking about health insurance, not car insurance. My apologies if that wasn't clear with the context clues. Story 146. Waving to cars for letting you cross the road. Saw a guy locally who just never does it. In fact, he just stares at cars approaching with a frown, and they always let him go. It's like he's shaming them into letting him cross. I got chatting to him once and said I admired it. He then made a hilariously convincing argument that we've to dedicate all of our space to cars. They force cities into bad design. We've to breathe in their exhausts and brake dust. They make lots of noise. They eliminate lots of people a year. He concluded that cars are a nuisance, and no driver letting a pedestrian cross deserves a wave or a nod or a smile. Story 147. Sending a message or typing up an excuse if you're running late, or sending a regret if you can't attend a wedding last minute. Yes, we had a guest that never said anything and never showed up. Story 148. Following rules or laws, you can just not do it. The reason they exist is ostensibly because they make life easier and better for everyone in society. The thing is that a lot of situations don't require any strict adherence to the rules in order to stop a negative outcome from happening. If it's not hurting anyone, go ahead and do it, even if it is illegal. Story 149. Work full-time as a man when you don't need the full paycheck. My happy life started after working part-time. Story 150. As a 14-year-old girl wearing makeup, it sounds ridiculous now, but at the time, I genuinely felt the world would end if I was seen out in public without my trademark inch-thick black eyeliner. I don't know when exactly I grew out of it, but as an adult, I wear makeup maybe once a month. Story 151. Tipping, I know it's gotten out of hand these days, but I met someone who flat out wouldn't tip for basic services. That person told me that pay is between the worker and their employer and not up to customer to supplement it. The only reason why companies get away with it is because we as customers continue to pay tips. Majority of the world does not expect tips, and service isn't any worse. Also, wait staff can't legally refuse service or tamper with your food if you chose not to tip. It's only a social obligation, and the person told me they are okay with being disliked. Blew my mind. Story 152. 5 bullets emails. Niche one for U.S. federal government workers. Marked all the requests as spam and never sent a single one. Story 153. Giving back to parents. Speaking about money. But hey, people do have different life, and I'm okay with that. Just was thinking like, oh, so you don't do that. Story 154. Listening to voice notes. The person is me. I don't do it and have not missed out on anything important. Story 155. I am someone who just doesn't judge people about food preferences. I ask about preferences and aversions, and why has never in their lives been something that was anything but loaded. It's usually met with something like, I just don't. And then I ask more questions. Is it the texture, a specific flavor profile, something else. I don't want to try to get clever with substitutions only to replicate what you didn't like in the first place. The slickness of mayo on a sandwich tells me maybe you'd like a stone ground mustard instead. And oil won't be a good assumption, but mayo and deviled eggs will be fine as long as it isn't a specific brand with a distinct taste. Story 156. I have never taken a driver's test. I did the multiple choice part, took the picture, filled out the forms, and got my first license. I was so worried it was going to be a movie-esque disaster, and it was all for nothing. This was in Florida back in the early 2000s. I'd had my learner's permit for like 2 years at that point, and I was a senior in high school. Story 157. Speak the truth and not manipulate people based on your own interests. I always knew it was a thing, but never considered that people around and close to me would do it. Learned the hard way. Story 158. Paying bills. My uncle never paid a single one as far as I can tell, although that lifestyle meant he had to live out of a van next to the county garbage dump. Story 159. Ironing. My wife used to keep asking why I bothered ironing my t-shirts, jeans, etc. It had just been drummed into me forever from my folks. Throwing the iron in the bin was amazing. Story 160. Monogamy. Moved next door to a healthy family with happy, intelligent children. Turns out parents are swinging around fully supportive of each other and crazy in love with each other. Story 161. Ironing. Sunday nights used to be 2 hours in front of the TV pressing shirts and an hour in the week. Now I just don't, as I don't have a shirt job anymore and everything else is just fine as it is. Maybe twice in the last 5 years, I've hung a shirt up near the shower to get the creases out for a funeral. Story 162. My friend said she doesn't wash her hands when she comes home after being out. I couldn't fathom it. I truly didn't realize that there are some people that just don't do that. Of course, I thought maybe some people just forget, but this person just never does. Story 163. I accidentally realized as a child that nothing is mandatory, much to the chagrin of my parents and teachers. Story 164. Sell thing you regretted buying to not lose money. You already lost money, and now you're going to lose time trying to sell it online to get 5 back out of 40 to feel less worst. Once again, you already worked your jerk off to buy shoot, and now you're going to work for free to sell then for a fraction of how much you'd paid. Once more, buying stuff is not mandatory. Stop buying things you don't need. Story 165. Using towels after showering. My boyfriend and his family don't use towels, but bathrobes to dry themselves off. Not sure if it's a Bulgarian thing or just their family, but I find it so odd. Why not just use a towel first and wear the bathrobe afterwards? Story 166. That I am not responsible for other people's emotions and actions, and that they are adult human beings that can do it themselves. Story 167. I thought I had to go by my first name. My name is easy to pronounce, but it has 8 letters, and people just don't take the 2 seconds it takes to figure it out. I just got tired of spelling it out. So, in places where I can, I just use my very simple middle name. It's the French version of my maternal Gemma's name from Louisiana, is my mother's middle name, my daughter's middle name, and 3 of my cousins. Why not? I felt guilty at first because my mom kind of poked fun at me for it, but when I reminded her that she named me that after her, she understood and chilled out. It's so freeing and it's still a pretty name. It just took me 50 years to figure it out. Story 168. Hygiene, specifically oral hygiene. Had a classmate in college who basically never brushed his teeth. His parent, Mother Iyer, don't believe in brushing their teeth as clean as C's toothpaste as some kind of conspiracy. He just drinks sodas or alcoholic beverages to clean it up. But he does other hygiene practices like bathing, showering every other day, hair trimming, and even uses sunscreen, but doesn't believe in brushing their teeth. This was weird for me. Story 169. Getting married and having kids. No one told me it was mandatory, but people always talked like there was no other way of life. But when I got in my 20s, I think a combination of things made me realize that I probably wasn't interested in kids, and that I didn't need to rush to do either if I didn't want to. A lot of worry lifted off my shoulders then, realizing I could do what I wanted. I didn't have to tie myself down with kids just because others expected me to. And the flip side, though, I have to deal with those people that act like you don't know anything about just because you don't have any. As if humans grow up in some bubble devoid of other people until they reach adulthood. Story 170. Showing up to work on time. When I was in the military, it's just a fact of life. You always show up to work, no matter what, rain or snow. Sick or hungover, you just always go. If you are sick, they will send you to the medical people. Out in the civilian world, I would see people that are scheduled to be here working with me just not show up. They didn't feel like coming in that day or got high or whatever. Even in a skilled position, just showing up every day on time puts you above a significant portion of the population, apparently. Story 171. Annual medical exams, dental cleaning exam, eye exam, physical checkup from your primary care physician. Story 172. Drinking multiple glasses of milk a day. I dislike it, but I needed to drink it to grow up big and strong, or whatever the marketing was. I'm not sure the first time I realized I didn't need to drink it after I wasn't forced to, but I haven't since. Story 173. Eating animal products, especially dairy. Those old milk adverts targeted at parents were very effective. Story 174. Jury duty. I grew up thinking it was mandatory. When I started receiving summonses, it occurred to me that the cops don't have the manpower to come after me. Never served jury duty, never even reported for the shape-up. Story 170. Work. There's a few people I just don't understand how they do it. No work, still smoke, drink, and whatever else they want to do, but never work or keep a job long. Story 176. Paying off your credit cards and believing predatory debt collectors. Just ignore them. They have no power. Story 177. Shutting the car engine off while you pump gas no matter the weather temp. Met someone from up north who said they never do this, where they're from. I haven't turned it off while pumping gas since Lowell. That's it for this video. Don't forget to support Vancher and my second channel, Vanchoose. See you soon.